Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I'm joined by the amazing Rey Hall. Luna, how you doing today?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I am very excited to have you here. But before we talk about why you are here, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. Luna is the author of 3 books, including the horror novella The Patient Routine. Now, um, when you were writing these books, especially one like The Patient Routine, what gave you the kick to finally go, you know what, I want to put this to paper and I want to make this happen? What gave you the influence and the kick in the butt to finally do that with like The Patient Routine?
Yeah, with that, with the patient routine in specific, I was laid off from my job and I had a ton of time and I had been writing before this. I went to school for, poetry. So that was my thing, but hadn't really touched horror, even though I had this huge passion for horror movies, horror books, and decided that poetry and horror actually have a ton in common with how it's crafted and formatted. So I set out to combine those two. Had a lot of free time, so wrote that book and 2 other books. So yeah, I mean it's kind of just grew out from time and the passion for to show that poetry can be scary too.
For sure. And it's all about timing. Just like I said, poetry and horror, comedy and horror. The reason these things all work so well together is because it's all about timing. The timing is the biggest key to these things. And obviously, I don't want any spoilers, but can you give us a brief synopsis about the patient routine and what that's about?
Yeah, so the quick pitch is it follows Ashton, who is a college student who has severe hypochondria or illness anxiety disorder, and they check into a hospital, an ER, and while they're waiting, a patient comes in that locks down the entire building, and shit hits the fan from there. And it's a lot of body horror. It's a lot of mental tricks. Yeah, that's kind of the real, the real quick.
Right. No, I dig it. And like you said, you have 2 other books as well. Can you give us a little bit about what those books are about?
Yeah, my first book that came out is Loudest When Startled. It's a poetry book. It's about family, gun violence. It was a strong collection. And then my last book is about queerness and finding yourself. So they've all slightly been informed by each other, but they're all kind of very different beasts too.
Well, no, and there's nothing more important. I've said this 1,000 times on this podcast. If you're lucky, you have 100 years on this planet. Don't spend 1 second of that short amount of time not being happy, not being who you are, and showing the world how proud you are to be the person that you are. So, Luna, like I said, as an author, I have all of their social media links down in the description as well. So you can follow them and stay up to date on everything they have coming up for us here in the future, because I promise you, this is just the beginning. I know you hear 3 books, so that's the beginning. In comparison to where we're going to be in the long run and what they intend to do, that's just the beginning. So, like I said, The Patient Routine is your newest novel. Do you have any plans on something coming up? I know NDAs exist, so you can't really go too deep into things. But do you have anything coming up that you are willing to talk to us about or able to talk to us about?
Yeah, I actually have another one coming out, another book coming out next year of poems this time. That's kind of related. It's about the hospital system and illness and health. So that's kind of related to the patient routine. And then I am working on another horror book that's kind of about, I don't know if you know about like missing 411, the like missing kids and missing people in national parks. It's kind of about that and fatherhood. So something in the works there too.
Awesome. And I can't wait. And like I said, if you want to know what they have coming up, and especially when we get closer to the date, you're going to know when they're releasing everything if you follow them on social media by clicking the links in the
Oh yeah.
description. So we know what you're doing in the future, Luna, and we know what you're doing now. But in order to write a horror novella, horror had to start for you somewhere. So now I would like to go back to the past and talk about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And Luna, the first horror movie you watched was?
28 weeks later.
Now, I just gotta say, I have done over 400 episodes of this, and every episode I love. They're all super special to me. And in all of those episodes, I've never talked about this movie. So there is a first time for everything.
Oh.
So, Luna, do you remember about how old you were the first time you had seen it?
Okay, so I think it came out in '07. So I would have been like peak freshman in high school, so 15 or so.
Wow. You started a little late.
I did, yeah, I know. I remember, there were times where horror movies were being played in my house, but I was not either allowed or I was too scared to watch them. But that was the first time where I, sat down, I was in a theater, I was with friends, and I experienced like an actual horror film.
Better late than never. And this is a good one to start off with because, like I said, you were older, so you were ready for the horror. And this one is a punch in the face, mile a minute horror film. So it's really cool to see. And obviously, it continued on what 28 Days Later did and building on the Dawn of the Dead remake with the running zombies and the fear that that brings. So, do you remember which scene it was, Luna, that affected you the most from 28 Weeks Later?
Yeah, so I mean, there are a ton of scenes in it that I think are really impactful, but I just have to go back to that very first scene where they're in that farmhouse or wherever they are, and it's just super quiet and dark, and then the kid shows up, and then everything just goes to fucking shit. And it just ramps up from there. The music picks up, everything swells. It kind of encapsulates like the whole film in this one little 10-minute segment of just this very calmness to chaos. And I think and it has so much in it. I mean, there's humor in it. Like at the end where he's running away and he's like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And you got like, you feel that too. So yeah, that opening scene just like has so much to it that I think that's what I just keep coming back to. And I've watched that scene, I've seen the movie, 7, 8 times. And I watch that scene on YouTube sometimes because it's just such a great scene on its own. And yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that opening could be it's just like When a Stranger Calls, Scream, these iconic openings that could really be its own short film if you wanted to. Like that's what I love about horror movies is we can take the first 10 to 18 minutes of a horror movie that we love and make it its own short film before the credits even roll. And this movie did a great job encapsulating that. And like you said, a lot of horror throughout the movie, but there is some comedy elements as well. A lot more than we had in 28 Days Later, that's for sure. So we
Absolutely.
talked about which scene affected you the most, Luna, but what would you say your favorite scene from 28 Weeks Later is?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, I do love that first one. That is probably one of my top favorites. Another one that I love a lot is when the two young kids that are the main kind of characters, when they're going into the city alone, because I just think it's so reminiscent of 28 Days, that really just like isolated emptiness that permeates the space that we occupy. And then another scene that really comes to my mind is when the father, the mother comes back, the father sees her, they're embracing, and then he gets infected, and it's just this absolutely horrifying scene where he's like gouging her eyes out, and it's just like this very hectic, frantic infection scene. And you're like, oh yeah, this is the downfall. It's always a horny guy, or it's always love, or the kid, it's always the kids who found the mom and they had to go out there and they had to see there. So it's just this like it's such a good like catalyst scene where everything just really goes to shit. And I feel like I've said goes to shit so many times, but I feel like this movie just like keeps going to shit again and again.
That could have literally been the tagline to this film.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
28 weeks later, it all goes to shit.
Yes.
So I mean, like, I totally agree. And this movie was supposed to be part of a trilogy. We had 28 days, we got 28 weeks. We've been rumored to get 28 months for about, 280 months now.
Yeah.
But is 28 months later, because I usually ask people, like, is your first horror movie one you'd like to see remade today? Well, it's so recent, I don't think that would work. But would you like to see them finally put, the trilogy together and finish it with 28 months later?
I mean, yeah, I would like to see, that was definitely, the ending scene where they're coming out, and I believe they're in Paris. They're like the zombie or the infected are swarming. Um, such a cool scene where it's just like it's finally gotten to a more global effect, because I mean it's really just very Britain, and then you get to kind of see that. So I mean, yeah, I would love to see 28 months later. Will it work? Probably not.
Right.
When you think about it, 28 days is so powerful as like an emotional piece and just a critique on so many things. And then 28 weeks later, I love it a ton. It's a great movie, but it's really more like action horror, and it really kind of went away from what it was trying to do. So I do wonder how they would kind of go this like big global war effort almost against the infected. But yeah, I mean, I would like to see it. I always love seeing like zombie films.
Sure. Well, I think that we're going to get another boom of those with the success of The Last of Us on HBO. I think that we're going to get, some of these things that we've been waiting to get, another Silent Hill, when they're seeing how well a video game adaptation can do if it's done well.
Yeah.
Zombie things will start picking back up again, which, like I said, The Last of Us is fantastic. So if it can bring more people to the horror genre, welcome. We'd love to have you.
Oh, yeah.
So, Luna, we know that horror started for you with 28 weeks later, which is a crazy way to start your horror life. Holy shit, now that I think about it. But what I want to know is, that was your first horror movie. But now I want to throw a little bit of a curveball here at you. My little buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Luna? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
Yeah, so I have two that I always go to. The first one is The Untold Story, which is a Hong Kong film from like the 80s.
Okay.
Like one of those category 3, just super grimy, super I mean, it's just filthy. It's a filthy film from front to back. But I love it. And it's hilarious in its own right, and it's just depressing. The cops, I don't know. I don't know if you've seen it, but I will never stop singing the praises of that movie.
Okay.
And then a more modern one is The Taking of Deborah Logan, which I think is a phenomenal film.
Ooh.
No?
Oh, I love it. I love
The
Taking of Deborah Logan, man.
Yes, yeah. That movie is just like fantastic. That kind of that was one of the ones that I like keep coming back to it. Probably like every year or so. There's so many scenes in that where it's just like so creepy, and there's so much realness to it, even though I mean it goes places, but there's a lot of realness to it.
Until that third act, you don't know what's happening.
Oh,
you don't know if this is mental illness or not.
Absolutely.
That's what I love about The Taking of Deborah Logan is obviously third act goes to shit, for our main characters. But man, that whole movie had me on the edge of my seat the whole time, because for me personally, look, I love slashers. Always have. I'm a huge fan of the slasher genre. But religious, psychological type horror like The Exorcist, The Taking of Deborah Logan, Possession, those are the ones that always affected me most. More recently, The Dark and the Wicked, holy shit, fucking terrifying. But The Taking of Deborah Logan really had me on the edge of my seat the whole time. And you want to talk about a movie that gives you fucking nothing for an ending? Like, what I love about this movie, you can absolutely take that ending and form it into any way that you want to make it. However you think that movie ended, you're right. That's how that movie ended. So that's another movie I could do a whole 2-hour show on, man, because I was a huge fan of that movie when it came out. I'm a huge fan of it now. It's
so good, and there's so many like iconics, like that the scene where they come around the rock and the child is in her mouth, just this like snake in her mouth. It haunts me. Like it haunts me. Like I've seen, my friends will send me that gift. They're gifts of that. And they'll send me that, and I'll just be like, no, thank you. Like I'm good. that's like that kind of contortion of the body is so creepy to me. But yeah, it's such a phenomenal film, and that's kind of has a lot of that quietness, and then it ramps up too. I mean, it's a it's just such a well-made film.
It's an example of when a slow burn is done to perfection.
Oh yeah.
It's totally a slow burn. And like I said, throughout most of the movie, you're like, okay, your grandma's sick. Good job. Congratulations. We've all been there. Then you're like, oh shit, that's a snake. All right, I'm gonna go to bed now, hopefully.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm actually really glad you brought that up because I'm a huge fan of the film. I've been able to talk to a couple on the podcast, actually, a couple of the cast members about the film, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, very, very well made film with a lot of really good actors in it. So I'm glad that you love it so much. Now, Luna, I've had an amazing time hanging out with you, talking about 28 Weeks Later, talking about some of your favorite horror movies from, The Taking of Deborah Logan to Untold Story. But what I would like to do now is I would like to go back to 28 Weeks Later. And what we're going to do is we're going to rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're not ranking it on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. What we're doing here is strictly ranking 28 Weeks Later on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Luna, what would your ranking of 28 Weeks Later be?
I mean, I'd have to go with like 4.5 stars, or 4.5 skulls.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it really just got to me, and it really it made me want to watch Days. It made me want to watch a ton of other zombie films. It made me want to watch a ton of other horror films in general. So I mean, it got me into the genre, and that's a success for what it's worth.
And I'm saying, without that movie, we may not be having this conversation right now.
Exactly.
You may butterfly effect. You may not be the horror fan that you are today. So I know I said this at the beginning, guys, but I have all of their social media links down in the description. So make sure you're following them by clicking the links down here. I promise you're not going to regret it, and you're not going to want to miss out on all the things that they have coming up for us. So Luna, please don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, if you haven't already, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help the channel a lot more than you know. And until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.